Hello and welcome to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard. Thank you so much for joining us again. In this segment, we're going to have a conversation with Jason Maraszewski. He's CEO, and Andrew Van Verst, COO of BioStem Technologies. They're joining us to discuss the development, the manufacturing, and commercialization of structural tissue allografts. Thank you so much for joining us here on Health Professional Radio.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Neil.
Yeah. Well, Jason, if you would give us a bit of your professional background, and then Andrew, if you would do the same after Jason concludes.
Sure. Thanks, Neil. Thanks to everyone for having us today. My professional background is started in engineering, went to school, Milwaukee School of Engineering, and graduated a degree in mechanical engineering technology, focused on using computer science to solve engineering and mechanical engineering problems. I left there and went to go work in, I'll call it the big world of SC Johnson, Husco, and ATI Lattice Forging, solving some of the material sciences problems at ATI with metals, and then translating that to human tissue and structural tissue, things that we do here at BioStem Technologies in 2014. Been here since the beginning with Andrew, one of the other co-founders, as well as his father, another co-founder of the company.
And Andrew.
Thanks again, Neil, and I appreciate you having us here. Andrew Van Verst, I'm the Chief Operating Officer of BioStem Technologies here. My background after I was in the Marine Corps, worked on helicopters there, served as a plane captain, overseeing kind of flight operations and pre-post-flight inspections, things like that. From there, I started an asset acquisitions company where we buy kind of distressed assets or distressed businesses and reformulated those businesses or either sold off the assets. From there, I joined Jason, my father, co-founding BioStem Technologies. I applied a lot of my quality and operational background that I received through my experience in the military into what we do today. And I'm currently running operations and overseeing some of the quality departments and serving as the management with executive responsibility within our organization for tissue allografts.
Tissue allografts. Explain to our listeners what tissue allografts are and why they're important in helping to heal certain types of wounds.
Yeah, so specifically what we do is process tissue allografts from perinatal tissue. So successful births, we utilize the tissue and take those grafts and minimally manipulate those. Those are kind of the FDA guidances on what we're allowed to do. And these tissue grafts, mainly coming from placental membrane, act as a barrier or wound covering for people with chronic wounds, basically wounds not healing within the standard of care. Mm-hmm. And what those do, again, is act as a barrier to outside influences, that help produce or feed bacteria that's currently active in the environment or the necrotic state of the wound, and serve as a barrier to protect and protect them from the outside environment. That allows, in turn, for the wound to start its healing steps. And obviously the goal with these things is to get chronic wounds that haven't, been handled within the standard of care to heal.
Now, we've all heard of skin grafts. Is this basically a skin graft, or is it a different type of skin graft?
Yeah, so skin graft would be an autograft or a graft coming from the own patient. That's usually done by basically a surgery that would remove a piece of the skin from some other place on the body and then place it onto the site, the injured site. This is a little bit different since it's not actual skin being placed back to the site from the person's own body. This is an allograft where it's coming from a donated tissue. So it's different than skin on skin graft. It's an allograft that's derived from birth tissue and used instead of a skin graft.
We're all aware of transplants, people donating organs. They're not necessarily, DNA identical, but we are, we're all people. Is that an aspect when it comes to allografts as well, as far as not being, the person's own skin or from a family member?
Yeah, there isn't an issue with the type of tissue that we use. They're kind of immunoprivileged and don't require an HLA type matching or a blood type matching for these grafts. part of the donor side of procurement and receiving the donated tissue is a social medical history and ensuring that there's no, history of transmittable diseases that would be inherent with the tissue that would cause the donor to be discarded. So we have a series of requirements that we require for these donated tissues to be eligible for transplant, to ensure that the tissue isn't going to have any adverse event when it goes into the recipient.
Something I'd also like to highlight, Neil, is we are an AATB accredited facility, something that Andrew also, being the MWR management with the executive responsibility here at our site, also holds a CTBS, Certified Tissue Bank Specialist license from the AATB, and being an AATB accredited facility really shows, our commitment to quality and also commitment to, being a good steward of donated tissue.
Now, what types of wounds are you focused on? I mean, different wounds, let's say on the foot, the hand, are much different from wounds on the forearm or the leg. Are all wounds potentially indicated for your products?
Right now, we're really focused on lower extremity wounds, mostly focused on diabetic foot ulcers, venous ulcers, pressure ulcers. Those are kind of the three initial areas of focus. Kind of the first bucket is really focused on diabetic foot ulcers or wounds that are in a chronic state that seem to not be able to get out of that circular loop and get back to going towards healing.
Are there any other potential uses for the same products other than diabetic foot ulcers or bed sores?
I think there is. We have to maintain what's called FDA's 361 criteria, where we're, making sure that the product is, like Andrew alluded to earlier, a barrier or a surface covering. So that kind of limits our ability to possibly use this in a surgical application, just because we need to make sure we maintain a barrier or topical covering or skin substitute covering.
It's my understanding that your company has developed 3 perinatal tissue allograft products for wound care. Could you walk us through each of these briefly and talk about how they're helpful in whatever types of wounds they're indicated for?
Yeah, so our main process or proprietary process we've developed within BioStem Technologies is called BioRetain. So in line with what Jason's mentioned and I've mentioned throughout this little interview we're doing here, all products have to be minimally manipulated. So you're only allowed to retain the natural components of these allografts. So using the BioRetain method, we've been able to retain, I guess, to use the word as its own definition there, retain the maximum amount of natural properties these allografts come with or are donated with. From that, we've created 3 different lines of different skin substitutes or tissue allografts, one being Vendage, which is a single layer amnion layer of the amniotic membrane. We also have Vendage Optic, which is also a single layer amnion side membrane, simply put into or cut into circular grafts for use on the repair of ocular surfaces. And then we also have the last allograft we mentioned here of the 3 is Vendage AC, which is the amnion chorion layer of the allograft. It retains the spongy layer or the middle layer in between those 2 layers as well.
Now, are all of these products approved and available? And if not, when do you anticipate availability?
All of these products have received what's called a TRG response from the FDA, the FDA's Tissue Reference Group. They've all been designated and classified as 361 products, basically maintaining their tissue allograft status. So those are all approved. We're currently working with CMS, the HCPCS team, to receive Q codes for reimbursement on these products. On the Vendage single layer product right now, we actually have approval and a Q code issued from CMS, and we're working to get the other 2 products approved and Q codes as well. But they're currently used and approved as a 361 product or designated as a 361 product by the FDA.
Give us a website where our listeners can learn more about BioStem Technologies and the products that you're developing there.
Yeah, of course. We actually just launched some mini sites for each product, so you can learn a lot about each product on their own sites. But if you go to www.biostemtechnologies or biostemtech.com, you can access, our corporate page there, and then if you click the products link, it'll bring you to a drop down with the 3 different products on there. More info will lead you right to the mini site.
Jason Matuszewski, Andrew Van Vurst, thank you both for joining us here on Health Professional Radio. Appreciate your time.
Appreciate you having us on. Thank you very much, Neil.
Thank you so much, Neil.
You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard. Audio copies of this program are available at hpr.fm and healthprofessionalradio.com.au. You can also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. Listen in, download it, SoundCloud, and be sure and subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com, Health Professional Radio.